All right, good morning, Lori and Catherine. As we're waiting for everyone to join our webinar, I'll give everyone a few minutes to join us, and then I'll go ahead and start the introductions. Okay, perfect. So good morning and welcome everyone to our webinar. This is Estate Planning Solutions, what a professional fiduciary can do for you. So we are excited to welcome two experienced and knowledgeable professional fiduciaries to present for us today. Before I introduce them, we have a few administrative matters. One, know that all attendees are on mute. We're going to use the Q&A function in order to ask questions. So go ahead and click on that and submit questions. We will be taking those at the end. Please, as a reminder, do not submit any confidential questions. The questions themselves will not be confidential. Also, if you want to make your username anonymous for purposes of this, you can rename yourself anonymous. You can rename yourself something fun. That's absolutely fine. Really, it's best to keep your questions general and then submit any specific questions that are more confidential by email or set up a consultation after today's program. So I'm sure also the presenters are going to be appreciative of me reminding you that today's presentation is general and educational in nature. It is not legal advice. So you're encouraged to speak with your own attorney, whether that's me or somebody else, if you have any legal questions. Now, I would like to introduce today's speakers. Lori is a veteran of health and disability advocacy and supporting person-centered practices since 2000. She is a speaker, a writer, and an educator to people of all ages and abilities. To back up her passion and tenacity, she earned a bachelor's degree in behavioral psychology and a master's degree in special education from California State University, Sacramento. This coursework and the ensuing experiences culminated with Lori obtaining a fiduciary license. Lori became a California licensed professional fiduciary in 2014 and has been busy specializing in matters of the person. Thank you very much for being here with us today, Lori.
I'm honored to join you. Thank you.
Our second presenter is Catherine Kane. Catherine is the owner of Kane Fiduciary Services and a licensed professional fiduciary. She is a current member with the Professional Fiduciary Association of California, PFAC, and also the acting president of the Sacramento chapter. She is a registered legal document assistant through El Dorado County and a certified paralegal with the National Association of Paralegals. Catherine has been helping seniors and disabled adults since 1995 and has the capacity for managing multiple complex cases with professionalism. Thank you, Catherine, also for being here. And now we're going to turn it over to Lori to get us started off.
Okay. Thank you so much, Heather. Like I said, I'm really honored to be helping you and that you have asked me to help educate your clients or anybody interested in this topic. It's different coming from the perspective of a fiduciary. And yes, and I want to reiterate, I do not intend to give legal advice. And Catherine, I want to explain the two of us, we are each licensed the same way. Catherine does the full gamut of everything we're going to be discussing today. And as Heather said, I just specialize in the matters of the person, but I'll explain that. So I'm going to show you my slide presentation here, and we'll get going. So our topic today, what a fiduciary can do for you, is going to explain to you sort of the background to what you can consider as an option for you in your estate planning. So a fiduciary can be lots of different things. It can be a person, or it can be a financial institution. The word fiduciary, as you know, comes from finances, financially related. And when it is involving a person, it is the highest legal duty of one person to another because it is a legal assignment. So we are obligated to act ethically. And the term best interest is used frequently because we are obligated to act in your best interest. But really, before that, we are your surrogate. So we need information from you to know what your wishes are and how you would like your estate handled. And to do
Lori, I
that,
can't see your screen. Did you want for us to be looking at your presentation right now?
oh yeah,
Okay, let's get that
that's great.
up.
Oh, darn it. Hmm. Uh, oh, I see. I know what happened. I'm sorry. That was awkward. I won't start over again. Okay. I'm sorry. There. Let me know when you can see it.
We can see it. Thank you so much.
Ah. Okay, so I went over all of these. Um, so again, a surrogate, that is really what we would like to be. So we need information from you. Um, Catherine is going to thoroughly go over the finance side of things, but that is where you provide information about how you want your estate handled, is through your trust and other documents that we'll review real quick. So I'm going to give you a background of this stuff so that you have the terminology in place um, to know what we're talking about here. Heather, can we run that first poll about what stage people are in so that we can see sort of where everybody's coming from?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So if you'll choose one of those, we can see that, and we'll give you a couple seconds here to do that. Heather, I believe you might be able to see the number responding there and report to us because I'm not seeing that.
I can. People are starting to chime in, so I'll give
Oh,
us
good.
a couple more seconds here to finish voting for us.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we've got about a majority of people have gone ahead and cast their votes. I know they're a little bit longer questions, so that might have.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So
Oh, there we go. Okay, so we have a lot of people sort of pre-stage. Okay, good to know. So this will probably be a very valuable presentation for you. You'll learn a lot, and that is our goal. So moving on then, good to know. Um, Fiduciaries come in a lot of different roles, in a lot of different ways. You can have a private professional fiduciary, such as Catherine and myself. Um, and you can also have a financial institution, as I mentioned before. But the private fiduciary is paid for through your estate funds. And around here, this region, typically the fees range from about $125 to $175 an hour. But that is not solid, and it's an individual thing. And sometimes it's based on local court rules. It's just an individual thing. So you'll have to check with each person. Professional fiduciaries are licensed through the Department of Consumer Affairs in the Fiduciary Bureau. We have strict guidelines that we have to follow, and we can be sanctioned, and we can get our license pulled, and so they watch after us pretty closely, and we watch after each other, quite frankly. So a bank's trust department can serve as a fiduciary, like I said. But anyone really can be a fiduciary if they want to handle these items. But they may just be a friend or something. They're not serving in a professional capacity or family member, and that's fine too. Uh, but there's also another side of this. There are people who do the same things that fiduciaries do that are served publicly. They're public conservators or public administrators, and so they are typically people that don't have a private means of paying. So today, we are talking about licensed professional fiduciaries. Quickly, how to choose a professional fiduciary. We have some ideas for you. Of course, you're going to want to talk around. Whenever you see this topic come up, you might want to be inquisitive and attend things like this. You're doing it. There you go. You might want to, pay attention. Ask your friends if you hear that they've gone and handled their estate documents. Ask about how it went and what they recommend to do. Um, Obviously, interview more than one fiduciary. And really, in the end, you'll want to trust your gut because, um, as I have found, not everybody clicks. It's kind of a personal thing, and it's so important. So you really want to be comfortable with the person, and it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them or they're not professional or anything like that. It is simply just a matter sometimes of personality not clicking. So you'll feel comfortable or you won't. And how does the professional fiduciary serve you? Uh, we can serve as power of attorney for healthcare agent. We can serve as successor trustee. We can serve as the executor of your will, and we can serve as your power of attorney for finances. There's a lot of other things we can do. Those power of attorneys are for a lot of different things, but these four items here are the basics. And I'm going to flash forward a little bit to tell you more about power of attorney, and then I'll go back. There's two parts to a power of attorney, really, when we're talking about that. One is a legal document. It describes the authority that you are assigning. And today we're talking about two different authorities, financial or healthcare. And then there is the agent, the person who creates the document, assigns an agent to act for them and make decisions on their behalf, which is the surrogate decision making is the goal. And if not, if we don't have enough information, it's best interest. So let me go back here again. Those four things are easy to see on this chart, hopefully. You can see that the power of attorneys play into each one of these. I only do the top left. Catherine does the whole thing. You can have a variety of a puzzle put together that will serve you best. If you have a family member who is close to you and you have confidence in with your decision making regarding your person, then you could choose that person as your agent on your advanced healthcare directive. The other three, the power of attorney for finances, the trust, the successor trustee, the will, which is the executor, that could all, we suggest, be done by the same person. There are times when I think it gets separated out a little bit, but I think it makes it more difficult. You probably will be advised that from your attorney, and you'll want to ask about that if that's a concern for you. Most licensed fiduciaries do all of this. I'm kind of weird. I just do the advanced healthcare directive. So real quick, I just want to go over what the difference is between estate and person. So the person side is really just that top left box, the advanced healthcare directive. The estate side is everything else. So the agent with the power of attorney for finance or the successor trustee handles the estate. They distribute the estate to the designated beneficiaries, sometimes on the person's death, but also sometimes earlier if your instructions are different, if you need help, in a different way, your instructions are what lead us. And then on the person side of things, this includes everything regarding the general well-being of a person, including their healthcare decisions, where you might be living, because that may need to change, again, according to your wishes, and bestly serving that as a surrogate. We can do the decision making for healthcare, but we do, but that is kind of a narrow part, really, if you just look at it like that. It isn't simply, are you going to pull the plug? Those issues are kind of hot topics, but that's much more than that because it is involving your person, as I explained. So your agent with power of attorney for healthcare does the person, and all of those other roles do the person and the estate. So why do you want agents? Well, there's a lot of reasons. If you were going to be traveling outside of the country and you were in the middle of closing, say, a real estate transaction or something like that, you will want to make sure somebody here is available to handle this transaction for you. There's a lot of other situations too, but the one that is probably the most concerning is in case you lose capacity. So I believe statistically, most people do not just all of a sudden pass away. it is usually a slow decline, and you begin to lose the ability to manage your in everything effectively. So this is a safety net, is what I like to call it. We serve to be able to support what you wanted to do when you have sound mind right now, or when you're able. And we're available if you come to a point where you're like, I really need help paying my bills. Well, that's your power of attorney for finances. You can trigger the powers of attorney to be active now or whenever you choose. It does not have to wait for you to lose capacity. So, capacity being lost is very common as we age. And you explaining to us your preferences and your wishes, how to handle your estate, your medical stuff, is very important so that you remain with control. So, the capacity thing, we see this a lot, these issues in dementia, but it happens for a ton of reasons. Um, there are 7 sort of domains that are looked at, but I won't be super detailed about it because the answer to this question, how is it determined, is who is asking. Because if you're an ER physician and there's a problem and you need to have consent, uh, they will go to the person first, the patient, and say, do you understand what I'm talking about? Do you know why we're doing this? um, what are you going to do to take care of yourself after this? Things like that. Are you here? Do you know where you are? Those things. If they answer sufficiently for that doctor, then that doctor has consent. You're good to go. But there's oftentimes that people don't answer sufficiently. Maybe you are, in a coma. Uh, Otherwise, don't know where you are or confused, just even for the moment. Then it may be determined that by that person that you don't have capacity. There is a legal designation of lack of capacity, and that is a much more stringent sort of rule. But your trust can spell out, or your advanced healthcare directive can spell out what you would like to be considered uh, in order for you to be declared to lack capacity. So you might have something saying, I would like 2 doctors to say so. And then that would have to be followed. And there are parameters that you add to your trust also to make sure that these things can go your way, keep you in control. So how do you do this? Um, the attorney is definitely going to guide you. But remember those 4 boxes within the Advanced Healthcare Directive is where you assign the power of attorney for healthcare to serve as your agent. And that is, like I said, your surrogate or your voice if you are not able to have one or you choose to have an assistant, sort of. Um, that document also helps you provide a health information release so your agent can get the information they need to go forward. And that is also where you direct your end of life wishes. However, it's pretty limited. You can ask your attorney about drafting it your way, get advice and have them handle that for you. Um, but I have a different method I'll share with you in a little bit that explains it in much greater detail so that you have full control. Who can serve as your agent for all of this? Power of attorney for finances in any kind of agent capacity. They must be over 18 years of age. They need to be willing to serve. Um, we recommend that they will act separately from their own wishes, and that is really difficult to do under a very stressful situation. So when you are considering who you're choosing for your agents, you might just want to try to figure out how reactive they are, how helpful you think they can be in a crisis. Because it has to be someone that is trusted and capable, a strong advocate, able to handle conflict and differing opinions. It cannot be a healthcare provider. But this issue is important for you to consider in these documents because when things get stressful, when somebody is very ill, or there's some kind of a crisis within a family, people do not behave typically in the same way they normally would. So you have to kind of think of people under pressure because they care about you and want to make sure to have their wishes met too. It's hard to separate. We're professionals and we kind of learn how to categorize things, compartmentalize things. So now I'll go into the healthcare agent part. Like I said, surrogate. So we step into your shoes and we conduct all of your personal affairs. We make decisions about you regarding healthcare, care decisions as well. So whether or not you need care provider that's of a different kind than you've got now, or at the time. We also decide your living arrangements. We also make the burial arrangements. So another reason why it is good to complete all of this stuff so that we know what to do. Professional fiduciary acts as a surrogate. I said that probably 5 or 6 times already, but those instructions are really important to us, and the information on your advanced healthcare directive helps. And I already mentioned that we collect additional information when you have a professional fiduciary help out so that we can be a surrogate. So planning this part, your care and your end of life, you can do that by taking the time and thinking it through and walking through what your preferences might be, especially with your end of life stuff, because that's the scariest. But we can help you do that. For my situation, what I do in my business, I have a planning system that I use to be able to help walk you through this, and we do it together. Other fiduciaries do a variety of different ways, so you can ask some questions about that, I suppose, when you do your interviewing. By the way, the advanced directive can be revised and updated as time progresses. So you can change any of this as long as you have the capacity to do so. And same with your trust documents, the assignment of any power of attorney, you can change that as long as you can do that. So here's just a shot of the documents that I'm talking about that my business uses to gather all of the information from you about your person. And it's lengthy, but it's easy to walk through. It makes sense. And once you get going on it, it will be a relief to have done, because these are all the things you need to do. You need to provide contact information of other people who we need to connect with for you. You need to give us those care instructions. Say you don't do well listening to a certain type of accent. We need to know that so that we make sure to get you a care provider that doesn't have that accent. Things like that. Any preferences, certain food you don't like, time of day you like to do certain things, it's all in there. And then it does have a separate big section about really forcing you to deeply think through how you want your medical care stuff handled. So it asks you for a tiny bit of history, mostly just current stuff. And then we also have a section where it asks you for your funeral planning information. And it also will walk you through anything you would like regarding a memorial and things like that, because that is the agent with power of attorney for healthcare's job to do that. And I'm going to stop sharing the screen now. Oh, wait a second. You know what? No, we have 2 more polls, Heather, but I think we should save those for the end if there's still time, because they will go much better after Catherine's. So let me do this here. There we go. There, are we back?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lori. So we're going to give Catherine an opportunity to get her presentation and screen shared.
Okay, can everybody see that?
Yep, looks great.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Catherine Kane with Kane Fiduciary Services, and I'm going to talk about the hats that we wear with regards to your estate. The executor of your will, power of attorney for your financial piece, and trustee or successor trustee of your estate plan trust document. So you have, of course, the right to name all different people for these 3 things. I will share just my opinion on this matter is that to me, it's important for this person to be the same person. And in my practice, I've gotten to where I kind of tell people that I'm not sure that I want to take on the case unless it is the same person. And that's for a variety of reasons. Mainly, continuity. It's also administratively easier, and with that comes less expensive. So we like to try and keep our fees as minimalist as possible. So some examples of that, some issues that I've had in the past was I was the acting trustee. The power of attorney for finances was somebody else, a grandchild or daughter, son, whoever it was at the time. That person got called off to Iraq for the war, and it became impossible to deal with the utility companies because the client was still living at the time. I couldn't sign the tax return as trustee. We needed the power of attorney to do that. So what ultimately ended up happening was we actually had to petition the court because the document didn't provide for an alternate, unfortunately. We had to go to court. And the whole idea of working with your attorney and creating a comprehensive estate plan is to keep you out of court. So that's not to say that it doesn't work. I'm sure there are plenty of instances where it can work, but that's just my personal preference and opinion about, I think it's helpful to have that person all be the same. Okay, so let's see if I know how to do this. Ah, look at that. Okay. So this next slide, we're going to just talk about the role as trustee or successor trustee. Your successor trustee has the duty to manage and distribute your trust assets according to the terms of the trust. So we like to call the trust the rule book. We want to make sure that we understand your trust, that we have read it, that we follow what your wishes are. Fiduciary, and we have the duty to act in the best interest of all beneficiaries. And typically, if we're acting as trustee while you're still living, then the beneficiary is you or you and your spouse. If it's after death, then of course it could be your children, cousins, brothers, sisters, whoever your beneficiaries are. And we have a duty to avoid conflicts of interest. So as I just said, we are often acting while you are still living. Most people do need some kind of help, sometimes within 2 or more years before your death. And I think that people forget or don't realize that when you're planning your estate plan, I think you're thinking of your death. And I always like to tell people, be sure to think about this as if you're a fiduciary, if that's who you're going to name, or whoever your trustee is going to be, that they may actually be helping you while you are still living. So just consider that. I think Lori mentioned earlier that you should probably interview more than one and make sure that the personality match or that you're, is kind of similar. So also, I like to tell people too that, you don't have to be incapacitated to have somebody act as your successor trustee. You can resign at any time. And believe it or not, it does happen. You might have one spouse pass away. The other one might have some physical ailments, might need to have some assistance finding, they're not safe at home anymore and they realize that. So they want your assistance to find the right facility. So you may actually be able to resign. Maybe you just don't want to pay the bills anymore. I've had people say, I just don't want to do it anymore, but I want you to come and share with me every month how you're spending my money. So we do that. Let's see, Lori already talked about the regular fees and that we are licensed through the State of California Consumer Affairs. The licensing agent is your protection. It requires us to have continuing education. Every year we have to do 15 hours or 15 units of continuing education. It mandates our code of ethics and requires an annual report every year so they want to know, how many cases do you have? How many are court cases? How many are trusts? So they do keep an eye on us. Let's see. Anyone can serve as a trustee and not be licensed. So it can be a family member. They're just not serving in a professional manner. So that's the difference. And I think we already talked about government entities such as public guardian, they do get involved, typically when there is no means of paying. So, okay, so the hats we wear. I'm going to talk to you about the 3 financial hats. The first one is the executor of your will. This term gets used a lot interchangeably with when people are doing their estate plan, they talk about their executor. The executor is actually a specific function and someone who is named in your will. Typically those wills, when you have an estate plan with these 4 parts, is known as a pour over will. And what that means is it's kind of a way so that if you've forgotten or left assets outside of your trust, that the will then captures those. So again, to keep us out of court. So the executor then manages assets that are not titled in your trust. I think the best example of that is your car. Most attorneys don't want an automobile in your trust because of liability. Typically the trust is just titled in your own name, and we use the will or our executor hat to take care of that asset. If you don't have a trust, then of course the will is the document or the rule book, so to speak. However, that is going to typically, depending on the size of your estate, then you're going to have to go through a court process known as probate. So we are here today to hopefully avoid that. Okay, so the next hat that we wear of those 4 Lori talked about earlier, power of attorney for finances. So this is a legal document that's part of your estate plan. The power of attorney for finance document is only good as long as you were living. It does end at death. So, but it plays a really important role. I think, as I was stating earlier, the power of attorney is a document that we need a lot of times to sign the tax return, to deal with utility companies. It also deals with any assets not in your trust. So it often happens where, somebody maybe loses capacity, you step in to act as their trustee, their power of attorney, and you find a checking account or a savings account that's not titled in the trust. So part of our duties would then, usually as we're retitling assets anyway, to put our names on things as your successor, we're going to make sure that those assets are properly handled. Okay, so this slide's just a little bit, I think for folks, they don't understand, or, most of you never even heard of a professional fiduciary or know what that means. I get that a lot. So I did this little slide to just give you a little bit of a thing about amateurs versus professionals and some things to think about. It's perfectly fine naming a family member. It happens all the time, can work very smoothly. So I'm not trying to say you should always use a professional, but just some things to think about. Oftentimes you might name the beneficiary as your trustee. Typically this is a child. That can sometimes cause a natural conflict of interest. So, just be careful, because if there's more than one sibling, feelings might get in the way sometimes. Amateurs are often surprised at how much work is involved. I've had a lot of people come in and say, I just did my parents' estate. I don't want to do that to my kids. That's not always the case, of course, but just there is a lot of work involved, and I don't think people realize that. Often, beneficiaries or your trustee who might be a beneficiary or family member, they're unprepared for the grief that they're feeling when they lose you as their family member. So they're also not always prepared for the conflict that may come up from other beneficiaries and that tension that could arise. Amateurs need a lot of support from professionals. They don't typically have the education. So although we think that it might be less expensive because you're having somebody that maybe isn't a professional that's charging fees at our rate, it's not always the case. Sometimes those, they have to rely on their attorney a lot more than we, question-wise, that you should always rely on your attorney. So, there might be some costs there. They might need to rely on CPAs a lot more who, they of course charge fees as well. So it's, think about that. It's not always less expensive. Amateurs, if they're like, friends or somebody, neighbors, are they bondable or insurable? So think about that. Typically, they don't have the trust accounting experience. Fiduciary accountings are a little bit different than what most people think of in an accounting capacity. It's not like what an accountant would prepare or what a QuickBooks, profit and loss statement might look like. They are quite different and do have probate codes that we have to follow to make sure that those reports are done accurately. Oftentimes they'll tell you that they're willing to serve, and they may not be willing to serve, but they do it anyway out of loyalty or for whatever reason. And so we always recommend make sure that the person that you name is willing and wants to serve for you. Okay, and of course, professionals, we're going to move to the other side now. Professionals are licensed. We're required to complete the continuing education. We're familiar with the ethics, the legal, the taxes, insurance, medical, different resources that might be available. We, of course, because we do this for a living, it's our full-time job. We have all kinds of resources, people that we can turn to that can assist us get the jobs done. We have systems to handle the workload, and just our fiduciary duty to treat beneficiaries equal. And then there's that trust accounting experience again, but I think I already talked to that. And professional fiduciaries are held to a higher standard. So if you do end up in court over a conflict or an issue or anything like that, the court does hold private professional fiduciaries at a higher standard than the family member fiduciary or trustee. Okay. Sorry, I got sidetracked. I was reading one of the questions, trying to decide if this is a good time to talk about it. The question was, how often does someone choose a fiduciary rather than a friend or family as a successor trustee? And in my practice, I'm finding that people are choosing a professional fiduciary more and more. I think, this profession wasn't a licensed profession until I think it was 2007. So, and unfortunately, there was no oversight really before that. So I think there was some bad feelings and emotions about that for a while, which I hope is changing. So I think that is changing, but still, I still have lots of people that come see me where the family or a friend is named as the first successor trustee, but they're wanting to make sure that maybe that friend or family member has the ability to not have to act if they don't want to, and so they'll look to a professional to maybe be their alternate. And so if you really want your family or friend, but you're a little uneasy and you want them to feel comfortable that, if they don't want to act, then they can resign and let the professional fiduciary take over. So this next one says, what kinds of things will my fiduciary do for me? This question is, I think, different for a lot of fiduciaries. So again, like Lori mentioned earlier, make sure when you're interviewing your fiduciary that you find out what their general practice and policies are. But generally speaking, fiduciaries will open trust bank accounts, will ensure that assets are titled in the trust, and add the fiduciary to the title as the successor. Will manage and sell real property. We'll manage businesses and assets, other assets. We work with financial advisors, CPAs, to manage investments, make sure that there's not significant tax consequences to different things we might be doing with the assets. Pay the bills, deal with utility companies, insurance companies. We complete accountings and tax returns. So that's generally, whether you're living or not, the things that we might be doing. as we mentioned earlier, if we're involved when you're still living, this can look, actually, it looks different for everybody. We're stepping into your shoes. So, everybody's lives are different. So, but typically if you're still living, and we're power of attorney for your health care and all four hats. For example, we might be managing your caregivers. We might be assisting with finding placement. We might accompany you to doctor's appointment. We will often try to find a caregiver to do that if it's just a general appointment. But if it's something that we feel we need to understand the doctor's directions, then we're going to take you ourselves. Or if it's about a surgical procedure or something like that. We're going to investigate and complete long-term care applications if you have that type of insurance. After death, when it's a straightforward trust administration, and again, these are just examples. There's a plethora of things that we could be doing. But after death, generally, we get an EIN number and we send out the notices. Sometimes the attorney will do this for us. Sometimes we will do it ourselves. It kind of depends on the situation. If the will is in our possession, we're going to lodge that with the court. That doesn't mean it's going to create a court situation. Whoever has the will, by law, we have to lodge that with the court. We're going to get appraisals and sell personal and real property. We're going to find good homes for your pets. That's big and very important to a lot of people. What happens to my pets? We take a lot of pride in trying to make sure that those pets, are fostered out, or perhaps your trust documents have provisions for your pets already. Even handwritten notes to your trustee is a great idea if you know of a neighbor or somebody that's going to do that. And in my office, we've been known to foster pets until we can find the right home for them. So very important to people. We're going to deal with insurance claims. We're going to pay creditors. Mostly, we're going to treat beneficiaries equally, always. That balance, sometimes hard to do because sometimes you have beneficiaries that are a little more aggressive than others, but be assured we're going to treat them equally. We're going to make the distributions, do the final tax return, and then we're going to hopefully get everything done and close those bank accounts. So those are just a few of the things we might be doing for you. Let's see. I'm looking at the questions real quick, folks. I'm going to leave those till the end if that's okay. I have one more slide. And basically, knowledge is power, ask questions. We have a professional fiduciary association of California. Not all fiduciaries are members, doesn't make them any better or worse than another if they're not a member. However, you can get some pretty good tools from the website. So I just want you to maybe jot that down. It's Professional Fiduciary Association of California. Easier is PFAC, which is the acronym PFAC. There is some tools on that website. One of them is, and where I got a lot of this, is the questions that you should ask when you're interviewing fiduciaries. There's a good little list there. And in fact, I see people bring that in sometimes. It's fun because we've seen it a lot. But a few of the things on there is, does my trustee have experience and expertise in handling finances? And these questions don't need to just be for a professional fiduciary. You might ask these questions of yourself if you're naming a family or a friend. The same questions. Does my trustee have accounting and bookkeeping skills? Do they have trust and estate tax experience? Are they going to know what to do and know who to call and before they just go, maybe cash out an IRA, because that's really important. Will my trustee remain objective and responsive and compatible with all the beneficiaries of other family members? Are they going to be able to keep the peace, so to speak? How are their skills? Or, is one beneficiary going to intimidate them over maybe another beneficiary? that speaking of the family member, that us fiduciaries better not do that. Do they have errors and omissions insurance? Do they work alone or have staff? What types of work is delegated to the staff? What are the fees and how are they charged? In my experience, most fiduciaries charge by the hour. I have heard of a few instances where they might be charging their fees by a percentage, but typically that's more with your bank trustees. How often is the accounting provided? That is usually spelled out in the trust document itself. And if it's not, then the law requires us to do an accounting at least annually. And what is their succession plan? So, which leads us right into the question, what happens if you retire or close down your business? Some fiduciaries have a succession plan in place. Maybe they have a partner, maybe they have an associate fiduciary. You should ask what that is. But my number one thing I usually tell people is always a good idea to just name an alternate fiduciary. So if you name Lori Cochran, maybe you name Catherine Kane second, or someone, I have an associate fiduciary in my practice. Some people like to name me and then they name my associate fiduciary. I have a pseudo partner in my practice that we've been together for years. We have a plan written up to be each other's successors. So you want to ask those questions. You also should talk to your attorney about power of appointment, because you might be able to have whoever your trustee is appoint their successor if they're retired. But there's some legal things you want to ask good questions about. I think, Heather, I think that's it for me. If you want to go to some of these other questions, and I think you guys had a poll or two that you wanted to.
How much time do we have, Heather? Do you want to do a poll and then go forward and end it up?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got about 12 minutes left till we're at an hour. So if there are any of those questions that you want to answer live now, I know you want to get to them all, but if you want to do that, and then I know you had some examples that you wanted to pull up. So if you want to switch who's sharing, I'll set up a poll and we'll make it a smooth transition.
Yeah, I have some guidance for our prompted questions. Catherine, if you wouldn't mind stopping the sharing, and then that way mine will go.
Yes, look at me.
Ah, there you are.
There you go.
No worries. So this one is the question, I believe, that that is frequently asked, that Catherine was just explaining about the succession plan there on the bottom. But that top question is so common. How are you going to know when to get involved? Because we don't keep in touch day in and day out. Nobody knows who to call you, how to call you, who you are. They don't even know you exist. So there is a poll question, Heather, if you don't mind pulling that up. The second one, yeah. Maybe you guys can let us know what you're thinking about with this. And it also gives you ideas of who you need to tell. I'm glad you laughed. You like that billboard one.
All right, people are, seems like they've gotten through all of our answers and are selecting their responses. We've got a couple A+ students in here and others, so I'll go ahead and share that in a moment. Last chance to get your answer in there. All right, there you go.
Good. Excellent. I think that's great. And so that right there was your learning experience regarding this topic. Suggestions of who you might inform. Some attorneys provide an emergency card, or you can create your own and just keep it in your wallet.
I often hand out extra business cards if they've chosen me and say, If you're telling your family, give them a card. If I'm the power of attorney for healthcare, I ask them to keep one in their wallet because emergency personnel usually looks in there or on the refrigerator, and especially with the attorney's card in the estate binder.
Yeah. Did you want to answer to talk about this? I think you had mentioned before, Catherine, you wanted to have a discussion about this right here.
You have 3 adult children, 2 of them live out of state and are busy with family of their own. 1 child's in Sacramento, but he's never been very responsible. You cannot rely on him to manage your finances or to take care of you if you're unable to care for yourself. How can you plan for your future so you know help is there if you need it? I think that in this scenario, we go back to who's named your power of attorney and successor trustee. In this particular case, I think a professional fiduciary is probably a good choice. So Lori, I can't remember what else we were talking about on this one, so I'll let you interject.
No, I think you're right, because this is such a common issue. People don't know how they can get assistance if they don't have anybody really to rely on. So yeah, that's super common. So here's some places to go for information, but you'll get that, I think, when you get access to these slides. And there you go. I'm not sure how many questions are
Oh, we have some questions over here still. One of them I'll go ahead and answer. Can you serve as a co-trustee with a child or with me? This question is probably specific to the fiduciary you're working with. It's a very good one. It's asked all the time. I personally do not serve as co-trustee with family members. The reason for that is there's some sticky things with our errors and omissions insurance about being co-trustee, but when you're a trustee, you are liable for the actions that you take. And in our businesses, we can't typically be liable for the actions of somebody else. So the answer typically is no. There are times where I will serve as co-trustee with the client, and I do have a couple of those, but that is even looked at pretty closely. I don't know about you, Lori, if you do that or not, but that's my answer.
So, I'll just address real quick this Deborah's about what point do you recommend meeting family members? I presume you mean having the fiduciary connect with your family so you can have a discussion about what the future holds. I don't know how common that is, but what I definitely advise is do tell everyone who cares about you what your plans are basically. You know, hey, I have this person. My company writes a letter that you can share with anybody you'd like, that explains about what a fiduciary is, the role in your life. And then it provides contact information. So maybe if you have a couple close neighbors, you want to provide them that letter. If you have family that will care, you want to provide them that letter and tell them your wishes, basically, so they're not shocked. So that's my answer to that one. Do you have anything to add to that, Catherine?
Nope. Nope. Only that, you know, if you're a person that isn't telling your children or your family or your neighbors, then I love the letter. Maybe put that letter in your estate planning binder so that it's there for when someone does find it.
Yeah.
Let's see. How do you manage the labor that's involved with all these potential task support while managing the admin side from the office? As an experienced daughter, niece, and friend, my time was spent in each case varied and took a lot of time as well as time off work to facilitate or advocate. Sometimes things can move fast or be complicated with the medical and financial. That's a great question. It's one that, as my business evolved, mandated me to keep hiring people. So I have an associate fiduciary and 5 admin assistants that help me with the various tasks. So, because it's a challenge.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think you should take this next one, Lori, from Diane.
Diane is explaining her role. Got that. So from Ray and Bonnie, Where do minor children fit into this plan? Well, I would ask the attorney, because there may be times where you can write into your documents that they can begin serving at a certain age. So that's really, I believe, how they can fit in. But as minors, obviously, they can't take any kind of a legal assignment and role if they're minors at the time.
Yeah, and I
Right.
wonder if there's a question there about whether it's breaking up guardianship of the children versus financial management of the assets that will then be used to care for the children. Will you talk a little bit about that?
Great.
Do you want me to talk about that?
That would be wonderful, yeah.
Oh, I thought you were going to, Heather. Yeah, go.
I did too.
Am I
Like, yeah.
Like she was going to talk about it. So yes, you will have to talk to your attorney about naming a guardian for minor children. As far as the financial side of the minor children, the trust document itself is going to tell your trustee how to protect those children, what kinds of things you can pay for minor children, and what ages. Most of the trusts I'm seeing these days come with distribution plans at staggered ages. Usually they can have, let's say, a third at 25, a third at 30, and a third at 35, on up to whatever age, depending on your situation. And again, you'll have to determine that. But that's part of the very in-depth estate planning you will do with your attorney, and then becomes the rule book for us to follow.
That's great. So from a practical perspective, how do you work with the guardian to make sure that funds are being dispersed if it's needed for, say, education or something else?
That can be done in a lot of different ways. In our office, we get a call from the guardian or the parent, and they make a request, or we get an email with a request. And if the request is appropriate, then we're going to take care of that. So we just have to evaluate each case individually. Most of my cases right now, the guardians and parents are pretty good. They don't ask unless it's, something, for important for education, things like that.
That's great.
Some fiduciaries I think I've seen where they have actually request forms that they have to turn in and why, and then they have documentation. Emails are fine for me.
That's helpful. I get that question a lot as I'm preparing the estate plan of how that's going to work. They want to understand what the relationship between the guardian and the fiduciary will be.
Right.
You want me to take that next one? I believe Catherine sort of addressed that, but maybe if I answer it, it'll give a different perspective about successors. Alternate.
Yep, great.
Sound good? So what happens if I select a fiduciary and I become incapacitated? And then the fiduciary becomes incapacitated. What am I going to do? Well, so you will assign an alternate for any time you're assigning an agent or a trustee. And I believe, and Heather can, adjust this language, you can add as many as you want, or, they will have advice for you. Your attorney will have advice for you about how to protect yourself well that way so that there is a succession plan. But you know what I don't think we talked about? Our succession plans for us. If there isn't someone already legally assigned to come after us if something were to happen to us, we have, in my business, we have a system where there's an emergency situation. Somebody knows exactly which files to pull and will contact either the person, and if they can't be reached, will contact the drafting attorney, so that arrangements can be made to help protect you. But yeah, alternates, successors.
Power of appointment.
There you go.
Which you can give to your attorney. You don't have to give it to the fiduciary to name their successor. So
absolutely. So I think two more substantive questions. Can I just ask this last question, because I'm dying to know too, Catherine, who does your hair, amazing.
What?
That last question there is just, I really want you to answer.
Oh my gosh.
Who does your hair?
Don't even bring that. I know her.
I was going to say, is her name Kathleen?
The other
Kathy Schulte and I share office space and staff. She's the one that's my succession plan right now. So she's being funny.
We like
Thank you, Kathy.
I think your hair does look good. The question we have here about showing the slides with the websites again, we'll do that right at the end. But then there's 2 more questions left. If you can, Catherine, if you can take that one about talking a little bit about the value of having a professional fiduciary for a special needs trust.
Oh, yeah, we didn't talk about special needs trusts at all. So, I don't know about the value of having, well, the special needs trust is probably one of the more complicated trusts to manage because a special needs trust is used for someone who is on public benefits, whether it be Medi-Cal, in-home supportive services, Alta Regional, through their services. And there's a lot of rules and a lot of things that if you make a mistake, then you potentially could owe back Social Security funds for your client or family member. So professional fiduciary, in my opinion, on special needs trust is extremely important because we have to constantly go to webinars, as they are these days, to learn how and those rules change. So
That's a hot topic and so important. I agree.
yeah.
There's so many rules to follow. I don't know how
There's
anybody
also-
that is a good professional do it.
Oh, thank you for that. There's also a follow-up to that question, is whether, with the circumstance where there's a trust set up and the minor might be subject to influence. I don't know, the circumstance I can think of where I've experienced with clients is the parents are divorced, and maybe one parent is concerned that a minor child is going to be influenced and need funds that is ultimately going to benefit the ex-spouse.
Okay. Well, the benefit to having a professional fiduciary involved is we figure that out pretty quick. We've been doing this a long time, and in the beginning I may give them a little bit of leeway, but I'm going to figure out pretty quick, oh, they're calling again, oh, now they want this, and wait, didn't we just do that 3 months ago? How much clothes can they buy? So I think you have to kind of rely that we're going to figure that out. I had somebody tell me the other day, so you're going to be their mom? I go, well, I guess that's one of the hats we wear.
I think you answered this last question, but I would like to clarify that it's not usually the estate attorney who keeps the fiduciary honest. Certainly we have responsibility to make sure to our clients that things are being done properly. But I think you've got some higher standards there. If you want to just recap that one more time for everyone.
Me?
Yes.
Yes. So the agency that oversees licensed professional fiduciaries is through Consumer Affairs, the California Licensed Professional Fiduciary Bureau. Another long mouthful, but you can Google that. And I think, Lori, don't you have that on that last slide?
I do. You want me to pull that up? And there's some other addresses on there too that people might appreciate.
Yeah. So anybody can report if you're not happy. I think it was the one before that, actually.
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure why I am not able to control this at this time.
Anyway, yep. So is it the fiduciary.california.gov? I'm not sure which one. I always just Google it. Professional Fiduciary Association, Professional Fiduciary Bureau through Consumer Affairs. They will tell you how to contact them to raise any kind of complaints. They are our licensing agency that oversees our continuing education, that we are managing our duty of ethics to our clients, being impartial. Just making sure that we're doing our jobs properly. They do. They can come down. They'll come down hard on us. They're watching. So
there's one other set of people that are watching, and sometimes they may not understand what they're watching for, but the beneficiaries,
Yes.
they can object, and they're reviewing the accountings, and if they see something that's not right, there are certain beneficiaries. Some are more or less capable of understanding and objecting, but
Right.
Can I add a little bit to this too?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I just wanted to point out that I feel like for the work that I do, I am really watched over by lots of different entities. One would be the courts. Everything that we do in a way that will be sufficient or handled, realizing that a judge may look at it and review it. And so I work up to that bar. I think most of us do. And our professional organization that Catherine mentioned earlier, PFAC, they also require their own special set of ethics, and to be a member, you have to, adhere to it. So they're also sort of a watchdog. And like you already were saying, the people involved in the situation, the beneficiaries, we are held to be accountable. It isn't just flying by the seat of your pants and doing whatever you want by any stretch of the imagination. It's very controlled, in my opinion.
So that kind of leads in, this last question says, so no one reviews your work, no one checks to make sure you did what the trust or will directed you to do. Again, Heather said the beneficiaries are watching. Let me just explain, we talked a little bit about the accounting and the fiduciary accounting and report, but I don't know that most people really know what that is. That is every dollar that comes in, all income that comes in, all assets, and then all disbursements. We have to devise a report that tells the beneficiaries what property was on hand when we took over and what those values were. We have to show all the income that came into the trust estate, all of the disbursements or expenses that went out, and what how those assets may be changed over time, and what the balances are at the end. And the beneficiaries have the right to ask for copies of the supporting documentation that goes with those accountings too. So if they want to see, oh, you've spent this much money fixing up the house, I want to see that, I'll provide it. Things like that. So
yeah, that is such great information. Well, thank you for putting that last page up there, because you've got, well, it just went away, but I'm sure everyone had time to check your contact information. If not, you'll get a follow-up email from me thanking all of the attendees for attending the webinar with my contact information. So if you need to be put in touch with Catherine or Lori, or you have questions for me, just send us an email, and we will be sure to help you out the best we can. Or of course, if you have an estate planning attorney that you're already working with, make sure to direct any questions that are of the legal nature to them. And we are wrapping up just a little bit over an hour. So thank you again, Catherine and Lori. You have provided us with wonderful information. We really, really appreciate it.
Oh, good.
Everyone has a lovely afternoon.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.